I am not an athlete. I'm not a strong person, and no one would ever mistake me for an athlete. I had the opportunity to sit down with world-class strongman Ken McClellend on this next episode. He shares a lot of lessons learned from lifting heavy shit most of his life. And for somebody that is as terrifying looking as Ken, we get into some really, really fascinating topics like yoga, Pilates, reading poetry, and finding joy. It's just a really fun episode, even for you people out there who aren't into weightlifting, exercise, and things like that. Big shout out to Jeremy Cloven for making the connection, making the interview possible. Appreciate you, man. And yeah, without me rambling on any further, let's get this show rolling with Ken McClellend. All right, so today I have Ken McClellend stopping by the show today to share some of his insights on becoming I would say like a world-class bodybuilder. Well, bodybuilder, strongman. How would you describe yourself?
Strongman. Bodybuilding has a lot more dieting. Strongman, you eat a lot more.
So how much are we talking calorie-wise? How much when you say you eat a lot more?
Upwards of 9,000 to 10,000 calories. Off season, anywhere from 3,000 to 4,000 a day.
That's crazy. I can't even imagine 9,000 to 10,000 calories a day.
It's a lot. It's your jaw gets tired from chewing. So,
so we were just talking before we started recording about kind of your background and how you got into not bodybuilding. Sorry, strongman competitions, weightlifting, and training. So going back to when it all started, how did you? Like, you just wake up one day and decide that I want to lift a ton of weights. I want to go compete around the world as a strongman. Or how'd that all kind of come to fruition?
Well, I started training lifting when I was 13 for high school football, and pretty much have never stopped. So after my football career ended, I kind of physically, and I've always wanted to be active and compete. So I ended up competing in MMA. And I fought for 6 years, and then when that got done, when I kind of just walked away from that, I at the time a guy walked into the gym and he had an implement called a log. It literally looks like a log and it's got handles and you clean and press it overhead. And I said, he's like, "Can I bring this in here?" And I was like, "Yeah, no problem." And I go, "What is it?" And he's like, "Oh, it's a log. I do strongman." And I looked at the guy and I was like, "You do strongman?" And he's like, "Yeah." I was like world's strongest man. And he's like, "Yeah, but not at that level. Like we have other levels. There's like amateur levels." And me and my buddy, he had just got done fighting in the UFC. We were both looking for something to do. And so we kind of looked into it, and there was one about 4 hours away, and it was like 2 months out. And so we just started training for it, and we went down and loved it. Both of us just got super excited. And that was in 2010. And we were just off and running. We started competing 2 to 3 times a year in like local smaller shows. I had a couple decent injuries in the first couple years, kind of sorting out how to train with that kind of weight and adapt to it. And then it fit, I'm a big guy naturally, but being able to, MMA was tough because I was always fighting to get my weight down to 270, to be able to fight. And with strongman, I can eat. There's no weight limit. So, which was nice after dieting for so long. And just as time went on, I got better and better and better. And it just kind of, fell in my lap that I was actually pretty damn good at it. So, it was fun. It's been fun. I love it. It's the fact that there's no two contests are alike. The events are always different. The implements are always different. You never get bored. It's a ton of fun.
What do you think about it kind of made it stick? Was it the fact that you were just naturally good at it, or was there something else?
I enjoy a challenge, and having to master so many different excuse me, so many different types of events. You know, just in pressing, you can clean and press a keg, a dumbbell, an axle, a log, Viking press, block press. There's all these different things, and each one is its own skill that you have to master and then develop technique and strengths. So there's always something challenging me. And that for me has always been, since I was a kid, if I wasn't challenged, I wasn't excited about it. I kind of lost interest. So for me, what made it stick was there's always something to improve on. There's always something to get better at. You know, you're never complacent. You're never like, you know what? I'm good enough. I don't need to work on anything. It's always, you know, even after winning a world championship, my first thought was, I need to get a stronger deadlift. I need to get a better overhead press. You know, didn't matter that I just won a world championship. I'm already thinking about, this is where I can improve and this is where I can get better. And so for me, the constant challenge is what has kept it interesting and exciting for me.
And it sounds like we talked about, well, maybe this is a good time to bring this up. So you said you won a world championship, and if my notes are correct that I took earlier, that you won 2 in 2018, a Masters and then the Ultimate Masters World in the UK. So do you want to give me the quick rundown of the rest of them that you've won or placed at?
So funny story. I won a Masters National Championship. I won 3. And then just by happenstance, there happened to be a amateur national championship for all ages, what they call the Open. And that was in Davenport, which is 40 minutes away. And after I won my 3rd Masters Nationals, they said, hey, if you want to, we let the old guy that wins this, he can go to the Open Nationals. We just let him go. And I was like, okay, cool. You know what? To hell with it. It's 45 minutes away. Why not? So it was 2 weeks after this other contest. So I drive down, jump in, and I do day 1, and I go home, and I'm sore. You know, it's heavy. And I drive back for day 2, and the lady that owns the company, Dion, pulls me aside, and she's like, hey, Ken. I said, yeah. She's like, do you know you're in 3rd place? And I was like, what? And she's like, yeah, like, we all checked it. You're in 3rd place. Well, I had such a good day too. I ended up winning the whole thing. And so I was the oldest guy to ever win his pro card. I won my pro card at 42. And so then I started doing pro shows. And then that's when I won. You got a last minute call to Ireland 3 years ago. Went over there, took 3rd. And then basically the next year won it. So I've won 2 Masters World Championships. I won Masters World Strongest Man and Ultimate Strongman Masters Worlds. And that's a UK-based company, and they do pretty amazing shows in the UK. There's pyrotechnics and music. It was pretty amazing. And then last year I took 2nd at Masters World Strongest Man. I had a couple mental mistakes, no excuses, and it cost me. And then, but everything's been canceled. So since that competition, because of COVID, everything's been canceled. So I haven't had an opportunity to compete. So I'm hoping to get a couple in this year.
That's cool. Well, I mean, I'm hoping that things get better soon. And yeah, I think everybody's just been on pause for a year. So it's,
man. Yeah.
Yeah. We'll get into that later though.
Yeah.
So I'm assuming there's quite a few people that compete in these strongman competitions or that try to compete in them. And I mean, you said you're 45 now, right?
Yeah, I just turned 45. Well, I turned 46 in April. So yeah, I'm 45.
Yeah. All right. I like how you said that. Well, I turned 46 in April, but I mean, I'm 45 until then. So
yeah. I'm like a little kid, but the opposite. How little kids round up, I'm rounding down. Like, nope, I am 45 until that last day. Like, because 46 feels a lot older than 45. So.
Oh, yeah, I get that. I just turned 33, and I'm like, man, I am. Yeah. I don't know.
Practically retirement age. Is what it feels like.
Yes, of course. Well, it's weird. It's like the older you get, it's like you remember when you were younger talking to somebody that age and being like, damn, they're pretty old, and then you get there and you're like, shit, now I'm getting there. Like, but
yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So I'm curious as to, because you're 45, you're going to these competitions, you're still performing at a really high level. There's probably some specific things you do in preparation for them. Compared to a lot of these other guys, like you seem to have this like sticking ability to continue performing at a high level. What do you think that is? That like, is it something in your preparation and your training, just like mindset? What is it that sets you apart from the other guys?
Part of it is, I think, and I hope this doesn't come off wrong, but it's a lack of ego. At some point, you need to start listening to your body, and you need to start doing things. So a lot of guys I know that compete, they don't do things to take care of their body because it's stupid, or I don't know what the word, like, so I do at least 1 to 2 days a week of yoga and Pilates. Right. And I started doing that in my late 30s when I was feeling beat up all the time. Right. So I tried yoga, and I was like, wow, like I feel better. I mean, yeah, I'm in a room full of like skinny little hippies, and they're bendy and like Gumby, and I'm like barely able to touch my hands behind my back. And you know what I mean? Like, but I kept at it. And in the last couple of years, I've really been putting a lot of work into Pilates, and it's been a game changer for me as far as my hips and knees feel better at 45 than they did at 40. And a lot of guys my age, a lot of guys as they get older, they try to train because of their ego. They try to train like they did when they were 25, not realizing that, no, your body's like, if you got an older car, you got to go out and start it and let it sit until it really warms up and then drive it. Right. Well, they don't understand your body's like an older car. You got to do things to take care of it. It takes more maintenance. It takes more upkeep. It takes more, care, and you got to plan ahead more. And you also got to listen to your body when there are days where you just got to walk out. And so I think once I started listening to my body and taking care of it more, that was a huge game changer for me.
Like when you said the yoga and Pilates thing, because I probably started doing yoga regularly at like 25, and I mean I'm just attesting to what you're saying, where I feel like you just feel better in general when you're doing it because your body's moving and stretching in different ways, and it's just but it's funny to me how many people, when I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna go do yoga, and they're like, okay, have fun, and I'm like, what? Like, what? Oh, I'm sorry. Am I not allowed to try to touch my toes? Is that too? Is that?
I think especially Americans have this picture of what like yoga and Pilates is in their head, that it's like soccer moms and their Lululemon pants, or like some crystal crunchy hippie, like chanting in the corner, you know what I mean? Like, and they don't realize, like, I always tell my athletes, because I coach a lot of athletes, and I tell them, there are things like mobility. It's a use it or lose it kind of thing. And the sooner you start maintaining it, which essentially yoga at its most basic is mobility work. It's stretching. It's, there's a sequence, there's all these, there's a science to it, but at its most basic, it's stretching. And if you look at, older generations from, Asia and these other countries where they don't sit the way we do, elderly people can still hit a full squat and rest on their heels. How many Americans do you know over the age of 25 can like sit into a full squat? Me included. I mean, like there was a point where I couldn't do it because I had lost that ability because I wasn't doing it. And I'm back to that point where I can do it at 45 because of the yoga, the Pilates, the mobility work. And to me, it's like, to bypass that and ignore that just because like it's not tough, I don't know how many people are, or it's not cool. Like I'll swallow my ego and be like, I will go to a room full of skinny, bendy people and look stupid in the corner, sweating and grunting because it makes me feel better. Like I'll swallow my pride and be the guy that they'll keep looking back at me. I did a hot yoga class.
Oh God.
I was dating this girl in Detroit, and we went to this hot yoga class at her gym. So I'm in the back corner, and all in front of us are just like bendy and twisty, and and it's this faster flow, and I'm completely lost and doing my best. But I got done, and I felt amazing. But I know like 2 or 3 times people were looking back because I'm like, like trying to stretch. I'm like, fuck, are you kidding me? I'm grunting and pouring sweat.
Mm-hmm.
And, but I got done and I felt amazing. And like, I don't care that I look like an idiot in the corner, like it's beneficial. And I tell all my athletes, like, you should be doing something like this. You should be doing it. And the sooner you start, the better you are in the long run. And I think that is one of the huge things that has allowed me to be stronger and more mobile at 45 than I was at 40 and I was at 35. So
would you have started yoga and Pilates earlier if you would have known the results?
Mm-hmm. I look back on my college because I played football at University of Arizona, and I look back at how limited I was in range of motion back then. And it's one of those like, oh, if I could go back and do it all over again, I would grab 13-year-old Ken and be like, you don't need to be in the weight room 6 days a week. 2 days a week, let's go find somebody with like dreadlocks and a peace sign and let's go do some yoga in the park. Right.
Yeah.
If I could go back and tell 13-year-old Ken that, that's what I would tell him,
That's
go do
awesome.
this, be smarter. But I don't know that 13-year-old Ken would have been cool enough with that. So
yeah, it's almost like it's like being okay looking like a jackass kind of like. I mean, I'm not like the ideal yogi. I'm like a skinny nerdy dude, and when I go in there, it's like all these people that they're definitely better at it than I am, and I have some lack of I have some lack of mobility from sitting at a desk too much when I was I worked from a computer for the most part, so shoulder flexibility and hips is it's a nightmare. But it's like I'm totally cool like sucking at yoga, so that way when I'm later on in life, when everyone else is struggling a bit, I'm gonna be like, I guess being like one of those elderly Asian folks that they're out in the park doing Pilates at 85 and living it up.
Yeah, I want to be able to get up and down off the floor. The last thing I want to be is that guy that has to call 911 because I like fell in my kitchen and I can't get up. No, I'm totally good with that. And I think too many people get caught up in, just like you said, they're afraid of looking stupid. They don't want to look dumb, so they won't go do it. I mean, everything I've done, I've looked dumb the first few times I've done it. And, you get better at things. So if it's worth it, you'll stick with it.
Yeah. And I gave this talk forever ago, and they asked me some question. They're like, oh, one piece of advice you give the audience. And I was like, just go like get comfortable at sucking at something that you want to be good at. Like just go be terrible at it. Because I think there's this perception now, like when you get on Instagram, social media, whatever it is, you just see all these people that are 5 years, 10 years farther than you. And then you look at where you are, whether you're writing, painting, becoming a strongman, doing yoga, and it's almost like you're expected to be there when you start, but you have to be really just terrible at it for a while until you're able to get there.
Yeah, nobody's posting on Instagram, here's my first day doing yoga, I suck terribly. You know what I mean? And then bragging about like, yeah, I couldn't, I can't touch my toes. Yay, look how awesome I am. No, it's you have to, you're right. I tell a lot of my clients something very similar. You have to embrace the suck. You have to embrace, like just you're going to suck at this for a while and it'll get better. And, just that's part of the process. So.
And I think so there was a couple collegiate athlete friends of mine when I was like, I was in Ireland visiting them, and I'm like, oh, I found a yoga class. They're like, oh, I thought you worked out. I'm like, yeah, I did, but like, I want to go stretch. And they're like, that's not a workout. I'm like, have you ever done Pilates, man? That is holding that pose for like a few minutes is it's not like lifting a ton of weight, but it almost requires a whole different like
it's apples and oranges. And I will say the hardest thing I've done in the past 10 years, and bear in mind, I have pulled semis, I've flipped cars, I have, lifted giant rocks. The hardest thing I've ever done was a Pilates workout with a girl I was dating. She put me on one of the reformers, and I remember thinking, this is the worst thing I've ever done. This is like dying. Like, what in the fuck is wrong with my legs, and why won't they move the way I want them to? I was so pissed. And she was laughing at me because she's like, I train NFL. I'll say the same thing. These are like elite athletes, and they come in and she's like, all right, move your foot 3 inches to the left. And you're like, oh my God, it won't move. Why won't it move? And you're just like, it's unbelievable. But, you know, like, I embrace sucking at it, and I've, by no means am I good at it, but I've gotten less sucky at it. And you see I've seen a vast improvement. But yeah, the yoga thing, you know, everybody thinks it's just easy until you go in there, and then you're shaking like, you know, Michael J. Fox. You're just like, you're ready to fucking, you're done. This is the hardest thing I've ever done. And, you know, it's deceptively difficult is what I tell people.
So I actually remember my first Pilates class. I was in Hanoi, Vietnam, and I thought I was going to a yoga class, and I get there and they're like, it's Pilates. I'm like, Pilates, whatever. I don't want to do this. and then yeah. So I was like, oh, that's probably really easy. I mean, I'm used to doing like an hour and a half of yoga or hot yoga or whatever. And oh my God, I was wrong. Like I ate my word. Like I was just like, yeah. They're like, have you ever done Pilates? I'm like, no, but I do yoga. I'm good, you know. And they're like, okay, good. And I just remember like 10 minutes in, we were like doing this hip stretch, and I was like, what is going? Like, why is this so hard? Why? Like, this is brutal.
Yeah. I got suckered into doing so the girl I was dating was a part owner of a Pilates studio, and she was teaching a class, like a public class. And so she's like, hey, I got a space in my 9:30 class. You should come along. And I was like, okay. So it's me, this 6'4", 360-pound, tattooed, giant human being in the corner, and like 7 women ranging in age from like 65 to like 25, right? And they're all like, and legitimately, I'm getting smoked by this 65-year-old grandma who's just killing it next to me, and I am dying, grunting, and we get done, and I'm pouring. I mean, like, literally, there's a puddle of sweat all around thing. I had to throw towels down for safety, you know. And this little grandma like pats me on the shoulder. She's like, "You did so well," and I was like, "Oh my God, this is the hardest thing I've ever done." I was like, "This is ridiculous," but I couldn't show it because it's just, you know, like, I'm a big tough guy. It's like I couldn't cry in the corner like I wanted to because it was so hard.
Oh, that would have been hilarious, though. She's like comforting you, consoling you.
Yeah.
Oh, man. She's like 85 pounds. Like, that's okay, Ken.
It'll get better. You know, you'll get better. That's what one of them told me. You'll get better. You'll get better at it. I was like, oh my God, this is terrible.
Okay, so yoga and Pilates, that's one thing that's definitely separated you. Is there anything else that you would say off the top of your head?
Honestly, the biggest thing was adapting ego, like swallowing my pride and not feeling like I have to train like the younger kids.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that actually is the biggest thing for me, because as you get older, you don't recover as quick. You know, same kind of thing. Like, remember when you were 20, you could pound beers all night, get up the next morning, go run, you'd be fine.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah. Well, yeah, you're in Utah. I forgot. You know, they don't do that there. But like but later on, you know, like you have 4 beers and the next day you're worthless. And it's the same idea. Your body doesn't recover from training stimulus as quickly as you age. And so for me, it was about like, I only work out 3 days a week, like lift weights 3 days a week. Other guys are doing 4 and 5 days. I go with a less is more approach. So it works out well.
That's cool. I feel like there's been a lot of research about that, where like Tim Ferriss did the 4-Hour Body, where he had some research on like how people spend, in his opinion and research, that people spend too much time working out. They're not working out effectively. They're just kind of like putting in a lot of hours and not doing it in the best way.
Yeah. I tell my clients it's bang for your buck. You know, the 80-20 rule, you get 80% of your results from 20% of what you do. So in my mind, why not focus on that 20%, the exercises that give you the most results? All the rest of the stuff is superfluous, and you don't necessarily need to waste time doing it and waste energy and recovery on it. So I just kind of I focus a lot on the bang for your buck stuff, the stuff that's going to have the most carryover to the most things. And that's how I handle my clients. So there's a lot of clients of mine that are like, shouldn't I be doing more? And I'm like, no, sometimes more is just more. Like, it's not better. More is just more. And, you know, I've had pretty good success with my clients, using a very similar training style. So
that makes sense. The 80-20 rule is something that I think can definitely be applied to a lot of other things too, where, you know, what are the things that you can do that will make up 80% of the results, instead of, you know, reducing the time, but increasing the quality, I guess.
Exactly.
So what are those lifts? So like if somebody was asking you, what are those?
The lifts that I focus on it's all compound lifts. By that I mean multi-joint lifts: squat, overhead press, pull-ups, rows, and then those are the big weight room lifts. And the other ones are just, you know, in StrongMan you do a lot of different types of carries and loads. And so, you know, we kind of focus on the things that have the most carryover. So, you know, a front squat where you hold the bar in front of your chest and squat, that will have carryover to loading events, to overhead pressing, as well as leg strength. So you can kind of train 3 events with one exercise, right? And then, you know, deadlift is an event that we normally do. So you train deadlift, but deadlift will help with the carries and loads as well. You know, overhead press variations of that. You know, I don't spend a lot of time doing isolation stuff like curls, you know, like bodybuilding stuff, like single joint motion. The only time in for joint health or for ego. Like, I let my high school boys, like, I go, you got 10 minutes. You can go in the corner and do all the crap you want to do, like, you know, muscle beach stuff. Like, they're over there doing curls to try to make their arms look cool, you know. But the majority of your results are going to come from, you know, those big 5 lifts, and you're going to have the most carryover to everything else. So that's what we focus on.
Yeah. And if I can remember how the body works, if you work your larger muscle groups, doesn't that create more, is it more testosterone or something like that allows quicker muscle growth in other areas as well?
Testosterone and growth hormone. It releases both of them. There's a study. I always tell this to the guys at the gym. I used to tell this all the time to the guys at like commercial gyms that just spend all their time, you know, benching in the corner to try to get big arms and chest. There's this famous study where they took 2 groups, and one group upper body workouts, but one group squatted heavy and the other group did like leg extensions and leg curls. And the group that squatted heavy had more growth in their upper body than the other group. And it's because the systemic stimulus that you get from heavy squats and heavy deadlifts, it's just that. It's systemic. Your whole body is involved in putting a heavy bar on your back, squatting and standing up. You know, I joke at my gym, it's like Fight Club. Everybody squats, everybody deadlifts, everybody, you know, like my mom, who's 70 years old, when she came to the gym, she was squatting, she was deadlifting. You know, it's a fundamental motion that needs to happen for everybody.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Cool. Yeah, that's I'm proud of myself at this point, because whenever I go to the gym, I'm always hitting deadlifts and squats, and I those are the only things I really care about is like rows, deadlifts, squats. I was fortunate enough, I had a roommate for a bit. He actually had a really interesting story. So he was like in the hospital because he's a big dude, and his health got really bad because he was just a big guy, carries a lot of weight. I think he had kidney failure or something like that. So he then just started like researching all this stuff and basically became like a competitive strongman. And I mean, he's probably about the same height as you. I don't know if he probably doesn't weigh nearly as much, but when I lived with him, yeah, he was like, oh, because I used to hit like curls, and I'm like, oh yeah, like look at I'm like, I got some triceps, you know, and but then he put together this workout plan for me, and I had never been able to get over certain tiers. I'm not a big person at all. I'm fairly small, so and I finally, just hitting deadlifts and squats and rows and all that stuff, pull-ups, I was able to get past a lot of those tiers I hadn't been able to get past before. And the only thing that was different was I was hitting deadlifts like 3 times a week instead of, trying to hit chest like 3 times a week. So
it's crazy. I always tell my clients doing it right helps. When you start doing things right, it's like amazing things happen.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like the 80-20 thing, like you said, hit those lifts and then throw in everything else and you'll get there quicker. One thing I want to go back and talk about is you said you'd had a few injuries when you first started doing strongman competitions. And I'm sure that was a mentally challenging time. I mean, not mentally and physically. So how did you get through that and continue training for competitions or like bounce back? And then what advice do you have for somebody else who maybe is going through something similar where they've had a setback and they're trying to work forward?
Well, my first major, I had knee surgery, but my first major injury was I tore my tricep tendon and I pulled a piece off the bone when I tore it. And so I had to have it completely reconditioned. And for 3 months, I couldn't put any weight on my hands. So I couldn't do any upper body stuff. And so what I did at that time was I picked some things that I could improve on. So I used some specialty bars where I could squat. And so I focused on just improving my leg strength and my core strength because I couldn't use my arm. So I did, it's called a yoke bar or a safety squat bar. I did yoke bar squats. I did yoke bar good mornings, step ups, yoga. Anything that didn't put pressure on my elbow, I did that would improve my core strength, my mobility, and my legs. Depending on your injury, unless you have like a broken back, you can work on something. You can, I had one of my clients just the other day. He had an unfortunate incident and blew his ACL, MCL, and PCL. And we talked, and I said, okay, this is an opportunity for you to improve your strict pressing for overhead. We'll have you do a lot of seated work and a lot of, upper body work. And this is an opportunity for you to drop some weight. He was a little overweight. So I said, this is an opportunity for you to drop 20 or 30 pounds through dieting during this time where you're injured and you're going to have surgery. And then, that will put you in a good position when you come back. It's finding something. If you're an athlete or you're somebody trying to come back, too many people get injured and they just walk out and they're done. They walk out of the gym. There has to be something you can work on while you're injured. If if you have a lower body injury, you can focus on upper body stuff. If you have an upper body injury, you can focus on lower. It's, you can always focus on core. There's things you can improve on, and by diverting, not thinking about what you can't do, but focusing on what you can, I feel like you come out of it better. You come out of it mentally, it's a little easier to deal with than, sitting around going, oh, I can't press or I can't squat. You focus on these other things that you can do, and you use those little victories of improvements to kind of stay motivated.
So you train a lot of people, it sounds like you train collegiate athletes, probably some MMA fighters, maybe some professional athletes. What do you think the difference is between the people who perform at the highest level when it comes to whether it be in the gym with you in their field versus the ones who don't quite hit the same level as like your top performers?
I would say honestly, it's mental. 90% of it is mental. It's the attitude that you come in. I can usually tell by the look at a client's eyes before they approach something, if they're going to be able to do it or not. I had a kid that I trained. He plays. I trained him in high school and then again right after college. He was a phenomenal high school athlete, but he had a couple scholarships, but he walked on at Stanford, earned a scholarship, got drafted by the Colts, and was starting up for the Colts. And the biggest difference between him and some guys that were probably better athletes was he shrugged off failure better than almost anybody else. And by that, I mean, if he failed at something, he didn't dwell on it. He was able to take it, learn from it, put it behind him, and move on. And I think, honestly, that is probably one of the best mental qualities of your elite athletes is to not dwell on failures or mistakes, but instead learn from it, adjust, and move on. If you look at a quarterback, you see quarterbacks in the NFL and you see guys, some quarterbacks, they throw an interception and they're hesitant to throw that ball again into tight coverage. And then you see a guy like Brady who throw an interception, and the next time he gets a pass, he will drill that same receiver and not hesitate. He's just got that confidence because he put that play behind him. And I think those guys, the guys that can put that behind him and still play with confidence or still train or approach their sport with confidence, they're going to be the ones that are most successful in life. And that honestly goes for anything in terms of a girl out, jobs, like school, all of it. If you're able to put mistakes behind you, learn from them. Number one, learn from them, but put it behind you. The faster you can do that, the faster you can get back to moving forward. And so I think that's what separates the elite from the good versus the people that are scared to screw up and they never really amount to anything. They're too fearful to even attempt it. Yeah. So how do you do that? That is, that's tough. I know for me, I learned it started for me in high school football. I had never played football until I got to high school. Never even watched a game. And I went out, as a freshman, and I had no clue what I was doing. And so I think, I would screw up in a play and I would get yelled at, but I would think to myself, like, okay, I'm not doing that again. Like, I'm not going to make that mistake again. And for me, it's just, I don't know, honestly, how to teach it. I try to tell kids, that's done. You can't change it. It's time to move forward. If you make a mistake or you lose a match or you jump off sides or whatever, you have to just move forward. And for me, it was always this desire to make it up. I gotta make that one up. And it was to just kind of show myself and other people that I wasn't the mistake I just made, that I could do better. It's a mindset. Part of it is learning to accept that you screwed up and not let it sit in the back of your head or sit on your shoulder like a little goblin telling you, like, you totally just screwed the pooch, man. Everybody watched it. You're going to do it again, and that's hard. That's definitely hard. But it's a skill. You practice it. I think, it's like anything, you can learn it over time, but you have to conscious of it and practice it.
We talked about COVID, and I said we'd get back to that fun stuff later. And I feel like this is a good time because I was thinking through, like, as you're saying that, I'm like, am I good at this? Am I good at putting that stuff behind me? And I feel like most of the time I am, but then this year was just like a giant kick in the ass for me and pretty much everybody else. It's just like when things really hit the fan, it's like, how do you put that behind you? And I'm like, oh man, it's been a fun ride. That's that's one way to put it.
Yeah, this has been. I have seen. Some of this stuff will never. I don't know how some people are going to put this behind them. I have friends that have lost businesses. I have friends that have, this has destroyed their marriage, their relationships. It's a smaller incident in life with no end in sight. That makes it difficult as well. I know everybody I know has been affected negatively. I don't know anybody that's been like, yes, this has been so good for me. Like, I learned to crochet. I
want to punch that person right now. Not the crocheter, but the
no shit. Yeah. No, this has definitely been. I've learned a lot. Like, I will say this: the one upside for COVID for me was because I had no competitions. I didn't feel this overwhelming obsession to be in the gym because I have a competition coming. Like when there's something about signing, like sending in the check, so to speak, like signing up for the competition. That now it's like, shit, shit just got real. Like I'm going to be in front of people. And so your training takes on a new urgency. But without having any competitions, I like went kayaking and hiking. I enjoyed it. Now COVID sucked, and it sucked. Took a bit of a hit, and everybody's business took a hit. But for me, the one I try to take the positive out of this is that I realized there's a lot more to life than just lifting heavy shit, right? Like there's all these things that I didn't know I liked that I used to avoid because, it might hurt my squat workout on Monday if I go for a 2-hour hike on Sunday. So I can't do that. I need to be home resting. Well, I didn't need to have a great squat workout. So I would go hike and then I'd still have a pretty damn good squat workout. So I was like, well, shit, like I can go experience life and squat heavy, so that was a positive I'm trying to take away from COVID.
Yeah.
So
yeah. And, I feel like too, there's not a lot of positives that have come out of the year for most people, but I think that on one level, I feel like you ever seen the movie It's a Wonderful Life? I feel like it's been kind of a George Bailey type of year for everyone. I was actually writing something about this the other day where, at the end of the movie, he gets that piece of paper from the angel that's like, nobody's ever poor who's rich in friends and family or something like that. So I think that maybe this has been a good year for everyone to realize like what's actually important versus what they think is important or what takes up most of their time on a normal year.
Well, and I think a lot of people, I've seen two on that same vein. I've seen two types of people. One who took this as an opportunity, that took the downtime, the shutout, like the shutdowns, the working from home as an opportunity to learn something new, explore something, to even if it was just to occupy their time. The people that did that seem to have a better sort of outlook, better mental health at this point than the people that sat around and just were like, oh, I just want to go to a fucking movie and like started drinking wine at like 11 in the morning.
Oh God, that was me.
Well, I think all of us have had a little bit of both, but like it kind of depends on like what the majority of your time was spent doing. Were you, trying to improve yourself in some way, trying to find, make the best of it? Or were you just sitting around going, fuck, I'm screwed, And I think depending on which direction you took of that is kind of how it's very indicative of A, who you are, but B, it's going to really predict how you come out of this, Like I said, I took the opportunity to go, okay, I can be outside. So I went and found a kayak that would hold my big ass. Which wasn't easy. And then I took motorcycle trips and did things that didn't put me at any type of risk, but were super enjoyable and were super fun. Going hiking, like I didn't have to social distance. I discovered things that I enjoyed. Mm-hmm. That if it had been a normal year, I'd have been training for my third competition of the year and, sitting at home in an ice bath just to make sure I was 100%. And you know what I mean? So I'm trying to focus on the positives of the last year. There aren't many, but that's the one I'm taking away. So
yeah, no, I think I feel like we've all kind of, at least everyone I've spoken with has had a roller coaster where, I've been on both sides of it where you're just like, oh my fucking God, what else, what else is going to happen? And I'm like, where's the booze at? It's 12, yep. But I don't have anywhere to go. So, but then, sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm just thinking about the time. So we shut down, my gym shut down for like 2.5 months. And at one point I realized I was taking the recycling out and I had like 5 wheels in the bucket. And I was like, ooh, I should ration these out so I don't look like quite that alcoholic. So like I took 3 out and took them back in the house so that the recycling guy wouldn't be like, holy shit, dude. So that I just put 1 in each week, as opposed to the 5 that were in there at once. I was like, oh, that doesn't look very good.
Yeah. So. I think we were all there at some point, and I had just gotten back from Thailand and I got stuck I was visiting a friend, and then they're like, everything's shut down. And I was like, can I just stay here? Because I was getting ready for my next trip. I was going to go to Spain and And then everything was toast, and then him and I would wake up in the morning and just be like, you want to drink? Like, that was like the first month of lockdown, because we're like, well, everything is closed. We don't know what's going on. We literally can't even really leave the house. So, let's, so, but I think it's definitely gone in ups and downs. So,
Yeah. Yes.
All right. So you said that we were talking earlier. You said that you had sold your gym, right?
Yep. So during COVID, a guy who lives nearby and he has a weightlifting equipment company reached out to me and said, like, hey, if you are thinking of selling, if because of the shutdown and whatnot, if you're thinking of selling, or if you get to a point where you're thinking of selling, I want the first crack. And I was like, all right, man, talk to me. Like, let's talk about it. And part of it is because this past summer, I spent so much time doing stuff because we were shut down. I didn't have to be there every day. If you own your own business, you take a day off, you're not making money. You know what I mean? Like, you have to be there, And so for me, I just kind of came to this realization that, like, the gym, I love coaching, I love training, but I hated owning a gym, right? I hated, oh, we're out of toilet paper, I got to run to Sam's Club. Oh, this broke, I got to fix it. I love training people and I love coaching, but I did not want to deal with the day-to-day shit anymore. And so when he made me the offer, we came to an agreement, and I was like, done, I'm out. Like, sweet. And my goal, I mean, right now I'm still kind of in transitioning with COVID, like, still limiting things you can do. My goal is to transition to less time at work and more time doing things that recharge my soul, for lack of a better word, doing things that bring, what's the little Asian girl that's like the clutter lady? Like, does this bring you joy?
Yeah.
Marie Kondo. Yeah. Doing things that bring me joy, like, like, and because I remember like somebody was talking about that, and I remember thinking, like, yeah, going to Sam's Club for toilet paper on a Tuesday morning because some guy walked out of the bathroom, holding a sweat towel, like, hey, you probably want to throw this away, we're out of toilet paper. And I'm like, fuck, I'm going to Sam's Club. That didn't bring me joy. So I was like, you know what, I'm gonna do more stuff that brings me joy. So yeah, that's one of the reasons I sold it. And it was definitely a transition. It was definitely I've owned a gym for 16 years, and it was really weird the first time somebody goes, so what do you do? And I was like, I owned a gym. Past tense. It's just been part of who I was for so long that there's been a bit of a transition, and it's been good. I'm happy. Like, I'm much happier now, trying to figure out the next phase, what I'm doing, where I'm going, if I'm staying here, if I'm moving somewhere else, if I'm, not quite tied down anymore by a business and a lease. And, and so I kept enough equipment that I can have the world's most badass garage gym wherever I move. So like, wherever I go, I will have a pretty badass garage gym that I can train for just about anything in. And so I'm just kind of, I was half tempted to rent a van or buy a van and just van around the country for a while, but I'm not there yet with all the snow and stuff. I'm kind of like, nah, I'll wait till it's a little warmer, a little nicer. I can see the whole country as opposed to just the southern half, So yeah, I sold it. It was a good deal.
Yeah, it's funny because, like, you're probably the strongest, biggest dude I've met, and you're sitting here talking about yoga, Marie Kondo, finding joy, and totally not what I expected at all. But I appreciate it because I think that it comes back to your thing where you said you have no ego, where it's like somebody else might be like, fuck that Marie Kondo stuff. I don't need the joy. Like, I'm a man, and you're like, no, I don't give a shit.
Yes. I was raised by a single mom, and I don't have, I've always kind of, I played D&D in middle school. Like I was a super nerd. I had a huge Warhammer 40K miniatures. I painted them in my room. Like I'm a comic book nerd at heart. I do not subscribe to the, don't get me wrong. I'll throw down and fuck somebody up when I have to, but I would much rather tell a joke and laugh. And like, I'm not that guy that needs to prove how tough he is, or I don't get wrapped up in that shit. Like I read books, I watch cartoons. I have a friend who nicknamed me Peter because she's like, you'll never grow up. You're like Peter Pan. She's like, you're just a big kid. And yeah, I mean, some people would say that's not great, but I just, I want to enjoy life, and there are things I love doing. Like I want to have joy. I want to smile. I like seeing people smile. I like helping people. And that's why I love coaching so much, is like helping people. Like you talked about your friend helping you get to that tier, something you never thought you could do. Like I love the look on somebody's face when they do something that they never believed they could do. That brings me joy. That's what like gets me out of bed in the morning, is being able to help people. And, like I recently just rediscovered poetry, believe it or not. I started reading some poetry during the shutdown, and like I had forgotten how much I liked stuff like that. There's a poet, there's a couple poets that I picked up that I got introduced to that are freaking phenomenal. I watched a live poetry show on Zoom and was just like crying. And I'm like, what the fuck? This is, and I laugh because my buddies are more your traditional, what you would picture like strongman guys, right? Like, yo, fuck that shit, man. Like, like the big tough guys. And I'm sitting here laughing, thinking if they could see me bawling at this Andrew Gibson poetry reading, they'd crack up. But I'm definitely a multifaceted guy. I'm not one dimensional. So
yeah, definitely sounds like it. It's funny because I'm in the business, like I own a business that does like digital marketing and stuff like that, and I tend to like, I'll talk to like the other guys I know in the industry, and they're like, did you read that latest business book? I'm like, I don't actually read most of those because like I feel like they're all the same. I'm like, but I read this Kurt Vonnegut book that was fucking dope. And then they're like, well, what did you get out of that? What did you gain? I'm like, well, nothing. It was awesome though. I mean, well, that's not true. I feel like I almost learn more from good fiction stories than I do from when someone's like, you got to grind, you got to work harder. And I'm like, yeah, I've heard that before.
Yeah. I've heard all the Jocko Willink get up at 4:30 in the morning alpha male bullshit. I get a little, I'm like, no, I like to sleep. I'll get up at 5. I'm good. Like,
I think if that brings you a level of joy or something in your life where getting up and like kicking ass is your thing, then that's awesome. But I think that there's like this weird thing where if you're not like punishing yourself to accomplish something, then you're almost shamed for it. Like you're like, he definitely wasn't reading a business book at the coffee shop. I'll tell you that. He was reading some like Rupi Kaur. He's never going to grow his business reading Milk and Honey.
I get the need to, I mean, like when I opened my business, I worked jobs for the first 10 years to build my training business to where I just train people. Like I get grinding for a goal, but just doing the, like, it's almost like bragging rights with some of these guys. Like, man, I get up at 3 a.m. and run for 2 hours just to be awesome. And I'm like, why? You couldn't do that later in the day? Like, holy shit. Like, it's cold at 3 a.m. I don't get into the the one-upping of suck, you know, like, oh, I did a workout that was this bad. Well, that fucking sounds terrible. I'll pass, you know, like, like I'll stick with what I'm doing. It's working. So yeah, like I said, I don't have an ego. I don't need to, like, I do have an ego, but I mean, I don't let my ego guide me in a lot of things. Like I'm the first guy to admit, like, well, fuck, I was wrong. And I'm going to try to figure out why, like, what did I do wrong? Okay. How do I fix it? How do I not make the same mistake? Cool. We're moving on, you know, like, and, I too many people aren't willing to admit, like, you know what, I fucked up. That's my bad. And I think that's a huge problem with society in general. But I think it carries over into so many aspects of people's personalities. The inability to say, like, I enjoy reading a book. Like, if you knew how many guys when I say, like, you know, oh, you know, how was your flight? Good, man. I read a book. And they were like, what? Read a book? I'm like, yeah, I read. Like, I had to throw away, you know, all these books when I moved because I didn't have enough room to, like, store them. You read? Yeah. You mean like books? Yeah. Like words and shit, you know, like, yeah, I do, you know, and they're all like, wow, okay. And it blows my mind, like, that people don't read. And I don't know. That's a whole other fucking topic.
Yeah. So, I know this wasn't on the agenda, but if you had 3 books, what would they be? Like, what would you recommend?
Oh, for someone to read, like, or just in general?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to throw out my favorite middle school book, Dragons of Autumn Twilight by Margaret Weis and Tracy Hickman.
Oh, I've read that.
It's amazing. That whole series is amazing. Anyway, The Art of Learning.
Josh Waitzkin?
Yep, Josh Waitzkin's. Yep. And then, the third one would be tough. I'm looking at my bookshelf right now, trying to decide. Man, I would say either Ender's Game or Starship Troopers. They both have such underlying themes.
Yeah.
You know, Ender's Game with right and wrong, life and death, you know, Starship Troopers on society and, you know, societal responsibility and, you know, doing your part for the community. I think everyone should read either of those books, but every parent, I tell them to read The Art of Learning. Every parent of every kid, I'm like, you need to read this book. And I think it's imperative for parents to understand the verbiage that they use and how they say things to kids, how that affects their personality and their ability to persevere through difficult adverse tasks. So,
yeah, those are. I don't think I've actually ever read Ender's Game. Now that I'm thinking about it, but those are 3 good recommendations. I love the. I can't remember the names, but it's the like the Tale of the Twins, Test of the Twins, or the Twins.
Yeah.
Dude, I love
those are,
that.
That whole series. I hunted them down at a used bookstore. I had the guy track them down for me about 12 years ago, copies of them, and reread all of them.
Holy
and
shit.
still cried when Flint Fireforge dies. And like, I just went full blown nerd there, but like when he's slaying against the stump and Tasselhoff, I'm just like, okay. You're a grown ass man. Stop crying. I was like, oh man, it brought me back to 14-year-old Ken crying in my bedroom, freaking, you know, thinking it wasn't fair that he died. Like, the best characters aren't supposed to die. Like, yeah, that's an amazing series. It's an amazing series.
All right, I got a recommendation for you. I've only ever cried reading one series, and it's the Hyperion series by oh crap, can't remember his name. It's not Stevenson, I don't think. I can't remember, but it's 4 books. It's like Hyperion, Fall of Hyperion, or something like that. Endymion, Rise of Endymion, or however you say his name. And it's a sci-fi in the future type of series, and the way the whole thing ends, I was just like, I can't. Like it's the only time I've ever cried like reading a book. I'm like, oh my God. Like it's so good, but so like it's just it's you. I don't know what happens when you read, but you typically kind of envision yourself in like that character's role, and then if going through that and the level of emotion you feel in that how he's written
Yeah.
the story. It's Simmons, I think. I can't remember his first name. Anyways, Dan Simmons, maybe. I don't know.
The Hyperion Saga. I will look for it tonight and download it.
Yeah.
I will download it.
Just be warned when you get to the fourth book is that one. You might want to read that in private.
Yeah, it's okay. I'm single and I live alone, so I can cry in my living room and be fine. It's cool.
That's awesome. All right. So are you, just to kind of start wrapping things up a bit, are you doing anything with like online training or anything right now? If anybody wants to find, if anybody wants to work out with, like, do one of your workout programs, anything like that?
Yep.
How would
I
they?
do. So basically, you would look me up either on Facebook or Instagram. It used to be that I was through the gym website, but I sold the website when I sold the gym. I'm actually going to get my own website up and running here in the next couple months. I'm not an online coach. I'm a coach that does some training online, if that makes sense. The majority of my stuff is done in person, but I do have a limited number of people that I work with online. Right now I have 10. I'm probably okay with doing 2 or 3 more. I'm pretty hands-on. So I do a lot of interaction. And so I would rather limit the number of clients I can have and have better interactions, better results, than be like, water that shit down and try to get 30 people. That's just, I've been told I'm a terrible businessman because I'm more interested in results than money. Like, I'm more interested in getting people where they want to go, because that's why I do it. As long as I can pay my bills and feed myself and put gasoline in my motorcycle, I'm good. So
Yeah. I didn't know you drove a motorcycle, so we'll have to. I did the Vietnam motorbike ride from north to south. Well, I made it most of the way. I crashed and I ended up in the hospital. But
my God.
we'll have to talk about that another time. I feel like I've just been like a broken record because it keeps getting brought up on here. But dude, if you can do that ride, I would. I did it by myself. So, but if you can do it, man, you should. And I can basically point. I can make a map for you of all the places you should go, and you will have like the best time of your life. It's really cool.
That'd be cool. I've got a lot of bucket list rides, and that's one of them. I've heard about it. A buddy of mine told me that it's an amazing ride. He was a Vietnam vet, and he had lost his hand and his foot, and he did it in a convertible and loved it. Like, he just drove it, and he was telling me, like, you should do it. He's like, a lot of guys ride it. He's like, you should do it, and it's kind of on my book. Based on your recommendation, I'm definitely going to throw it on there for the next 10 years to get over there and do it.
Oh yeah, there's not a lot of experiences quite like that, I would say. And I mean, even doing it alone, it's like so safe and so much fun. It's really cool. One of the things you said earlier though or just a minute ago about not being a good, quote unquote, good business person because of that. I actually think that if you do the opposite, I think that actually makes you a really terrible business person, in my opinion. Because I run into these people all the time. And they're like, oh, I got all these customers, but then they don't do anything to take care of them. And it's like, oh, they're the guys flexing on Instagram about how much money they made, not necessarily like there was something read forever ago about some guy bragging about how he has a yacht and all this stuff, and he was trying to get this guy to be his client. And so the guy said something like, okay, well, that's a nice yacht, you have a nice boat and all this stuff, where's your client's yachts at? And then the guy was like, oh, well, they don't have any. So it's like, are you doing it to enrich yourself? Are you doing it to enrich yourself, or to help the people that you're selling a product or service to?
Yeah. I think too many coaches are too many people get wrapped up in what their coach does as opposed to what their coach does for them. And I think it's the same principle. You know, like when you hire someone, it should be what can they do for you, not how many followers your coach has or how many titles he's won. It's how many people has he made from good to better, better to great, you know, and things like that. So same idea. Yeah, 100%.
Cool. Yeah, it's I think that everyone would probably be a little happier if people took more of that approach in business, but or anything really, weightlifting, coaching, all that stuff.
Yeah.
Well, I don't really have a ton of other questions for you, Ken, but I guess before we wrap up the interview, is there any other things you'd like to leave the audience with? Any messages or advice?
Don't be afraid to suck at something new. And don't quit just because you suck at it. And those are the two biggest things that I tell most of my clients. It's just in my life, I've started over so many times in different sports, in different states, in different gyms that, you know, you just got to, you know, sometimes you just got to put your head down and keep moving forward, and it will get better and things will get better. And I think in this day and age with what's going on right now, that's important to remember that it's just, yeah, things may suck right now, but they will get better. So.
Hey, thanks for tuning into this episode. Really appreciate you taking the time to check it out. Now, if you found any value in this episode or in any of our others, make sure and subscribe if you're watching our YouTube channel. Leave us a review on iTunes. Follow us on Instagram and Facebook, whichever platform. Means a lot to us, and you know, we'll be able to reach more people with some of these fun and interesting stories and guests. So anyways, thanks for taking the time, and I will see you next time.